the ship was falling apart. Commander Vexel could hear the metals screaming as they broke through the thick atmosphere. Warning lights flashed red across every screen. The emergency systems were failing one by one. "Brace for impact!" Vexel shouted to the crew. There were 12 of them on the survey ship. They had been mapping the outer edges of the galaxy when the engine failed. Now they were crashing toward a planet that Vexel knew very well from the galactic database. Earth, classification, Deathworld, Class 7. The survival manual was clear about such planets. Maximum survival time for standard species, 72 hours. Most died within the first day. The oxygen levels alone were enough to burn the lungs of most beings. The gravity was crushing. The temperature swings were deadly. And the wildlife, the manual said the wildlife was beyond dangerous. The ship hit the ground hard. Vexel felt the impact shake through every bone in his body. For a long moment, everything was dark and silent. Then the emergency lights came on. Dim and red. "Report!" Vexel called out. "Everyone, report!" One by one, his crew answered. Medical Officer Tenna was injured but alive. Navigator Dorix had a broken arm. The others had cuts and bruises. But they were breathing. They were alive. But for how long? Vexel pulled himself up and looked through the cracked window of the ship. What he saw made his stomach sink. Green. So much green. Plants everywhere. Thick and wild. Trees that reached toward the sky like giants. Grass that moved in the wind like waves on an ocean. "We need to stay inside the ship," Vexel said. His voice was steady. But inside he was afraid. "The atmosphere out there will kill us slowly. Our suits can filter the air, but only for a limited time. We have 3 days at most." "3 days?" young pilot Kira asked. Her eyes were wide with fear. "What happens in 3 days?" Vexel did not answer. He did not need to. Everyone knew what happened in 3 days on a Deathworld. They spent the first few hours trying to fix the communication system. It was damaged beyond repair. The engine was destroyed. They were stuck on this planet with no way to call for help. "The emergency beacon is still working," Dorix said, holding his broken arm against his chest. "But it will take at least 6 weeks for anyone to receive the signal and reach us." 6 weeks. They had 3 days. Vexel looked at his crew. They were good people. They had families waiting for them back home. Children. Parents. Friends. And now they were going to die on this terrible planet, far from everyone they loved. "We should document everything," Thenna said quietly. "So others will know what happened to us." Vexel nodded. It was all they could do now. Leave a record, tell their story. Maybe their deaths would help others avoid this same fate. When the sun began to set, something strange happened. Vexel saw movement outside. At first, he thought it was one of the deadly creatures the manual warned about. He grabbed his weapon and pointed it at the window, but what he saw made no sense. It was a person. A living being, walking upright on 2 legs, with no protective suit. The creature was carrying a tool of some kind over its shoulder. It looked calm, relaxed, like it was just taking a walk. "What is that?" Kira whispered. Vexel checked the database. The image matched a species that the Galactic Council knew about, but had never made contact with. They were called humans. They were native to this planet. "That's impossible," Vexel said. "Nothing can be native to a Deathworld. Nothing can survive here long enough to evolve." Nothing, but the evidence was right in front of his eyes. The human had spotted their crashed ship. It stopped walking and stared at them for a long moment. Then it started moving toward them. "It's coming this way," Dorix said. "What do we do?" Vexel had no idea. Everything he knew about survival said this should not be happening. Humans should not exist. Yet here was one, walking toward them with no fear, no protection, nothing but the strange clothes on its body. The human reached the ship and knocked on the metal hull. Vexel could hear the sound echo through the broken walls. "Should we open the door?" Thenna asked. "The atmosphere," Vexel started. We're going to die anyway, Kira said. Maybe this creature can help us. It was crazy. It was against every rule. But Kira was right. They had nothing to lose. Vexel pressed the button to open the emergency hatch. Hot, thick air rushed into the ship. It burned his nose and made his eyes water. The oxygen levels were so high he felt dizzy. The human stepped inside and looked around at the injured crew. It was a male, Vexel realized. About average height for its species. Brown skin, dark hair, and kind eyes that showed surprise but not fear. The human spoke. The translator in Vexel's ear took a moment to process the strange sounds. Are you hurt? Do you need help? Vexel stared. This creature was offering help? On a planet that was supposed to be certain death? We crashed, Vexel managed to say. We are stranded here. Our ship is destroyed. The human nodded as if this was a normal situation. My name is Tae-ho. I have a farm, not far from here. You should come with me. Night is coming, and it gets cold. Cold? Vexel checked the temperature reading. It was 43 degrees by their measurement. That was extreme heat by galactic standards. And this human was worried about cold? The survival manual says we have 72 hours maximum on this planet, Vexel said. Tae-ho tilted his head and made a strange sound. Vexel's translator identified it as laughter. 72 hours, Tae-ho said. My family has lived on this land for 3 generations. My grandmother was born in the house where I was born. Come. You look like you could use some food and rest. Vexel looked at his crew. They were all staring at the human with the same shock he felt. 3 generations? That was impossible. Completely impossible. But Tae-ho was already walking away, waving for them to follow. And for reasons Vexel could not explain, he felt something he had not felt since the crash. Hope. Let's go, Vexel said to his crew. We have nothing to lose. They gathered what supplies they could carry and stepped out of the broken ship. The air was heavy and thick. The gravity pulled at their bodies. Every step felt like effort, but ahead of them walked a human, casual and relaxed, on a planet that was supposed to be impossible to survive. And if this human could live here for 3 generations, then maybe, just maybe, Vexel and his crew could survive too. At least that was what Vexel told himself, as they followed Tae-ho into the dangerous green wilderness of Earth. The walk to the farm took about 30 minutes. For Vexel and his crew, it felt like hours. The gravity of Earth pressed down on them with every step. The thick air made breathing difficult. Their legs burned with effort, but Tae-ho walked ahead of them like it was nothing. He even hummed a little tune as he moved through the tall grass and wild plants. Sometimes he would stop and wait for them to catch up. A patient smile on his face. Almost there, Tae-ho said. Just over this hill. Vexel looked at the hill and felt his heart sink. It was not a big hill by any standard. But to his tired body, it looked like a mountain. Still, he pushed forward. He had to be strong for his crew. When they finally reached the top of the hill, Vexel stopped and stared. Below them was a valley filled with green and gold. Fields of strange plants stretched out in neat rows. Animals walked in a fenced area, making sounds that the translator could not identify. And in the center of it all was a house. A real house, made of wood and stone, with smoke coming from a tall pipe on the roof. This is my family's farm, Tae-ho said with pride in his voice. We grow rice, vegetables, and we raise chickens and pigs. The land has been good to us. Vexel could not believe what he was seeing. This was a Deathworld, a Class 7 planet. According to everything he knew, no civilization should be able to exist here. Yet this human had built a farm, raised animals, and lived a life that looked normal. How is this possible? Medical Officer Senna asked. Her voice was weak from the difficult walk. The radiation, the oxygen, the temperature changes. How do you survive? Tae-ho looked confused by the question. Survive? We don't just survive. We live. This is home. They reached the farmhouse as the sun disappeared behind the distant mountains. The sky turned orange and pink, colors that Vexel had never seen on any other world. It was beautiful, in a way that scared him. The door of the house opened, and an old woman stepped out. She was small and thin, with white hair and wrinkled skin, but her eyes were sharp and bright, full of curiosity as she looked at the strange visitors. "Grandmother," Tejo said, "I found these people in the forest. Their ship crashed. They need our help." The old woman, whose name was Sun Yi, studied the aliens with careful attention. She did not seem afraid or shocked. She simply nodded and stepped aside. "Come in," she said. "You must be hungry." The inside of the house was warm and filled with strange smells. Vexel's translator told him these were food smells, but they were unlike anything he had ever experienced. His stomach made a noise, and he realized he was indeed very hungry. Sun Yi moved around the kitchen with speed that surprised Vexel. For such an old creature, she had a lot of energy. She pulled out pots and pans, chopped vegetables, and started cooking a meal for 12 unexpected guests like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Sit, sit," she said, pointing to cushions on the floor. "Rest your legs, you look tired." The crew sat down carefully. The cushions were soft and comfortable. Pilot Kira let out a small sound of relief as she finally got off her feet. "I have many questions," Vexel said to Sun Yi. "If you don't mind." The old woman smiled. "Questions are good. Ask. How long has your family lived here? On this land?" Sun Yi thought for a moment. "My grandmother built the first house here. She came from a city far away, looking for peace and quiet. She raised my mother in this place, and my mother raised me. Then I raised my son, and he raised Tejo. So, 5 generations, if you count my grandmother. 5 generations." Vexel felt dizzy, and it was not from the oxygen. The survival manual said 72 hours maximum. This family had lived on Earth for over 100 years. "The manual is wrong," Navigator Dorix whispered. "Everything we thought we knew is wrong." Tejo came into the room carrying blankets. "I heard what you said earlier, about 72 hours. I don't understand. Why would anyone think that?" Vexel tried to explain. "Earth is classified as a death world. The atmosphere is toxic to most species. The gravity is extreme. The temperature changes are deadly. The wildlife is dangerous. Everything about this planet is designed to kill." About. Tejo and Sun Yi looked at each other. Then they both started laughing. It was not mean laughter, but the kind that comes from genuine surprise. "Toxic atmosphere?" Tejo said. "You mean the air? We breathe it every day." "The gravity is normal to us," Sun Yi added. "And the temperature?" "Yes, it gets hot in summer and cold in winter. We wear different clothes. We adapt." "What about the wildlife?" Thena asked. "The creatures that hunt and kill?" Tejo shrugged. "There are dangerous animals, yes. But we have learned to live with them. We build fences. We keep lights on at night. We are careful. It is just part of life." The meal was served. Strange food in bowls and plates, things Vexel had never seen before. Rice, vegetables, and something Tejo called stew. The crew looked at the food with uncertainty. "Is it safe for us to eat?" Vexel asked. Sun Yi smiled kindly. "I cannot promise it will taste good to you, but it will not harm you. Our food is simple and clean." Vexel took a small bite. The flavor was strange but not unpleasant. It was warm and filling. And for the first time since the crash, he felt his body begin to relax. As they ate, Tejo told stories about the farm. He talked about planting seasons and harvest times. He talked about the animals and their habits. He talked about the weather and how to read the sky for signs of rain. To Vexel, it sounded like the description of a paradise, not a death world. How could such a dangerous planet produce such a peaceful life? After the meal, Sun Yi brought out a hot drink that she called tea. It was bitter and sweet at the same time, and it made Vexel feel warm inside. "You are welcome to stay here," Sun Yi said, "for as long as you need. We have room, and we have food. On this farm, we take care of each other." Vexel looked at his crew. They were injured, tired, and far from home. But for the first time since the crash, they did not look hopeless. They looked curious. They looked almost comfortable. "Why are you helping us?" Vexel asked. "You don't know us. We are strangers from another world." Sun-Yi set down her tea and looked at him with those sharp, bright eyes. "When I was a young girl," she said, "there was a terrible storm. Our house was destroyed. We had nothing. But our neighbors came and helped us rebuild. They shared their food and their time. They asked for nothing in return. That is how we survive, Commander. Not just by being strong, but by being kind. By helping each other." Vexel felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to understand what it was. It was respect. Deep respect for this small old woman and her simple wisdom. "We are grateful," Vexel said. "More than I can say." Sun-Yi smiled and patted his hand. Her touch was warm and gentle. "Rest now," she said. "Tomorrow, I will show you how we live on this world you call dangerous. And maybe you will understand that survival is not about fighting against a planet. It is about learning to live with it." That night, Vexel lay on a soft bed in a quiet room, listening to the sounds of Earth outside the window. Strange insects made music. Wind moved through the trees. Somewhere far away, an animal called out into the darkness. It should have been terrifying. But somehow, surrounded by the warmth and kindness of this human family, Vexel felt safe. He closed his eyes and slept better than he had in years. 5 days had passed since the crash. Vexel and his crew were still alive. Every morning, he woke up surprised by this simple fact. The survival manual said they should be dead. Yet here they were, eating breakfast with humans, walking on a death world, breathing toxic air. Their bodies were slowly adjusting. The gravity still felt heavy, but it was getting easier to move. The thick air still burned a little, but less than before. Medical Officer Thena said their bodies were adapting, learning to survive in this strange environment. "It should not be possible," Thena said one morning. "But our bodies are more flexible than we thought. We are changing to fit this world." Taeho's sister, Yuna, had joined them on the farm. She was younger than Taeho, with quick movements and a sharp tongue. She worked the fields with a strength that surprised the aliens. Every day, she lifted heavy tools and carried large bags of grain like they weighed nothing. "You are staring again," Yuna said to Navigator Dorix one afternoon. His arm had healed thanks to Thena's medical care, and he had been following Yuna around the farm, watching everything she did. "I apologize," Dorix said. "I have never seen anyone so strong. Your muscles must be very different from ours." Yuna laughed. "I'm not that strong. You should see the people who work in the mountains. They carry twice what I can carry." Vexel had started keeping a detailed record of everything he observed. He wrote about the humans' strength and endurance. He wrote about their ability to work in extreme heat and cold. He wrote about their food, their habits, their way of life. But on the 6th day, everything changed. It started with the sky. Vexel noticed the clouds moving fast, faster than he had ever seen clouds move. They were dark and heavy, rolling toward the farm like a wall of darkness. "Something is coming," Vexel said. Taeho looked up from his work in the field. His expression changed immediately. He dropped his tools and started running toward the house. "Get inside," Taeho shouted. "Everyone inside, now." Vexel felt fear grab his chest. "What is it? What's happening?" "Storm," Yuna said, her voice calm but urgent. "A big one. We need to prepare." The next few hours were chaos. But it was organized chaos, Vexel realized. The humans knew exactly what to do. They had done this before. Many times, Taeho and Yuna worked together to secure the animals. They moved the chickens into a strong building made of stone. They led the pigs to a shelter underground. They tied down everything that could fly away in strong winds. Sun-Yi directed the aliens to help carry supplies into the house. Food, water, blankets, medical supplies, everything they might need if they were stuck inside for days. "How bad will this storm be?" Pilot Kira asked. Her voice was shaking. Sun Yi looked at the sky with experienced eyes. Bad, very bad. But we have survived worse. The wind started to pick up. At first, it was just a strong breeze. Then it became something more. The trees bent sideways. The grass flattened against the ground. Dirt and leaves flew through the air like missiles. Vexel checked his weather scanner. The numbers made his blood run cold. This is a hurricane, he said. A massive atmospheric event. Wind speeds over 200 kilometers per hour. This is catastrophic by any standard. Taeho finished securing the last window and wiped sweat from his face. Typhoon season. They come every year around this time. This one is bigger than most. But we'll be okay. Every year. This happened every year. And these humans treated it like a minor problem. The storm hit with full force as night fell. Vexel had never experienced anything like it. The wind screamed around the house. Rain hit the walls like bullets. The whole building shook and groaned. The crew huddled together in the center of the house, terrified. This was exactly what the survival manual warned about. Deadly weather events that could kill in minutes. But the humans did not huddle. They did not hide. Taeho walked around the house, checking windows and doors. Yuna prepared hot food in the kitchen. Sun Yi sat by the fire, knitting something with calm, steady hands. How can you be so calm? Thena asked Sun Yi. The wind outside could destroy this entire house. Sun Yi looked up from her knitting. This house has stood for 3 generations. My grandmother built it to survive storms. She chose strong wood and deep foundations. She knew what this land could do, and she built for it. As if to test her words, a massive gust of wind hit the house. The walls creaked. Something crashed outside. Everyone jumped except Sun Yi. That was probably the old shed, Yuna said from the kitchen. We needed to rebuild it anyway. Vexel stared at her in disbelief. A building had just been destroyed, and she was talking about it like a broken cup. The night was long and loud. The storm raged for hours. Vexel could not sleep. He sat by the window, watching the chaos outside through a small gap in the shutters. Water poured from the sky. Lightning flashed every few seconds. The wind bent trees nearly to the ground, yet inside the house, it was warm and dry. The fire crackled. The humans went about their evening routine. Taeho read a book. Yuna played a card game with some of the alien crew members. Sun Yi finished her knitting and started making tea. Around midnight, a loud crack echoed through the house. Everyone froze. Tree fell, Taeho said after a moment. Big one, from the sound. We'll check it in the morning. He turned the page of his book and kept reading. Vexel felt something shift inside him. For his entire life, he had been taught that survival was about technology. Better ships, better weapons, better shields. The galaxy's greatest civilizations built machines to protect them from nature, but these humans had no shields, no force fields, no advanced technology. They had a wooden house, a stone fireplace, and each other. And somehow, that was enough. Near dawn, the storm began to weaken. The wind slowed. The rain became gentle. The terrible noise outside faded to a soft whisper. Taeho stood up and stretched. Worst part is over. We should sleep for a few hours, then see what damage we have. The aliens were exhausted from fear and no sleep. They lay down where they were, too tired to move. But Vexel stayed awake a little longer. Taeho, he said, I need to ask you something. Taeho sat down beside him. Ask, how do you do it? How do you live on this world without being afraid all the time? Taeho thought about the question for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft and thoughtful. We are afraid sometimes, he admitted. Fear is natural. But fear does not control us. This is our home. The storms, the heat, the cold, the dangerous animals, they are part of our home. We don't fight against them. We learn to live with them. We prepare. We adapt. We help each other. And when the storm passes, we rebuild what was broken And keep going. He smiled at Vexel. That is what humans do. We keep going. Vexel nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand something important. Something that no survival manual could ever teach. These humans were not surviving on a death world. They were thriving. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most amazing thing Vexel had ever seen. When the sun rose over the damaged farm, it found 12 aliens and 3 humans standing together, looking at the fallen trees and broken fences. There was work to do, and for the first time, Vexel felt ready to do it. 3 weeks passed after the great storm. The farm was repaired. The fallen trees were cut and stacked for firewood. The broken fences were rebuilt stronger than before, and the alien crew had become part of the daily routine. Vexel no longer spent his days waiting for death. Instead, he helped Sun Yi in the garden. He learned the names of vegetables and the right time to pick them. His hands, once soft from years on a spaceship, became rough and strong from working the soil. You are learning fast, Sun Yi told him one morning. You have the hands of a farmer now. Vexel looked at his dirty fingers and smiled. I never thought I would say this, but I enjoy this work. It feels meaningful. The other crew members had found their own places on the farm. Medical Officer Thena worked with the animals. She had discovered that Earth creatures responded well to her gentle touch and calm voice. The chickens followed her around like she was their mother. Navigator Dorix had become Yuna's shadow in the fields. His broken arm had healed completely, and now he spent every day learning how to plant, grow, and harvest crops. He said it was for research purposes. But everyone could see the way he looked at Yuna when she laughed. Pilot Kira had found a different passion. Taeho's son, Do-Yun, was a young boy of 8 years. He was curious about everything, always asking questions, always wanting to learn. Kira had become his teacher, telling him stories about the galaxy and the many worlds beyond his sky. Is it true that some planets have 3 suns? Do-Yun asked one afternoon. They were sitting by the small river that ran through the edge of the farm. It's true, Kira said. And some planets have no sun at all. They float through space in complete darkness. Do-Yun's eyes went wide. That sounds scary. It is a little scary, Kira admitted. But you know what I've learned since coming here? Your world is scarier than most of those planets. And yet you live here without fear. Do-Yun shrugged like this was obvious. Earth is home. Home isn't scary. Such simple words from such a young human. But they carried a truth that Vexel had been struggling to understand for weeks. The bond between the aliens and the human family grew stronger every day. They ate meals together, worked together, and rested together when the day was done. The cultural differences that seemed so large at first began to fade. In their place grew friendship, trust, and something that felt almost like family. One evening, Do-Yun asked Kira to teach him how to fish. The river had many small fish, and catching them was both fun and useful for the family. I don't know how to fish, Kira admitted. On my world, we get food from machines. Do-Yun looked shocked. Machines? That's so boring. Come on, I'll teach you instead. The young human led the alien pilot to the riverbank. He showed her how to make a simple fishing pole from a stick and some string. He taught her how to attach the bait and how to throw the line into the water. Now we wait, Do-Yun said, sitting down on a rock. Fishing is mostly waiting. Kira sat beside him. The evening air was warm and soft. Insects made music in the grass. The water sparkled in the fading sunlight. It was peaceful in a way that Kira had never experienced before. Do-Yun, she said after a while. Do you know that my people thought your world was impossible? We believed nothing could survive here. Do-Yun pulled in his line to check the bait. That's silly. Lots of things survive here. Fish, birds, animals, plants, people. Earth is full of life. I know that now, Kira said. But before I came here, I was scared. I thought we were going to die. The boy looked at her with serious eyes. Were you really that scared? Yes, very scared. Do-Yun nodded slowly. Then he did something that surprised Kira. He reached over and held her hand, the way a child comforts a friend. "You don't have to be scared anymore," he said. "You're with us now. We'll take care of you." Kira felt tears in her eyes. Such kindness from such a small human. It was almost too much to bear. Back at the house, Vexil was having a different kind of conversation with Tejo. They sat on the porch, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. "I have been keeping records," Vexil said, "of everything I've seen here. When we are rescued, I will make a report to the Galactic Council. I want them to know the truth about humans." Tejo raised an eyebrow. "What truth is that? That you are the most resilient species I have ever encountered? That you don't just survive on a death world, you build families, create art, grow food, and find happiness. That your strength comes not from technology or weapons, but from your connection to each other and your land." Tejo was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "That's a kind thing to say. But we're just ordinary people, Vexil. We're not heroes. We just do what we must to live." "That's exactly what makes you extraordinary," Vexil said. "Other species would give up. They would look at a world like Earth and see only danger. But you looked at this world and saw home. You built something beautiful in a place that should be impossible." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The stars grew brighter. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird sang its song. "Can I ask you something?" Tejo said finally. "Of course. When your rescue comes, will you be happy to leave?" Vexil thought about the question carefully. A month ago, the answer would have been obvious. Yes. He would be happy. He would be relieved. He would want nothing more than to escape this dangerous planet and return to safety. But now, the answer was not so simple. "Part of me will be happy," Vexil admitted. "I miss my world. I miss my family. But another part of me." He paused, struggling to find the right words. "Another part of me will be sad to leave. This place has changed me. Your family has changed me. I will never look at the universe the same way again." Tejo nodded. "You will always be welcome here, Vexil. If you ever want to come back, the door will be open." "Even though I'm an alien from another world?" Tejo laughed. "You stopped being an alien weeks ago. Now you're just Vexil, the worst farmer I've ever seen, who somehow managed to kill a plant that my grandmother said was unkillable." Vexil laughed too. It felt good to laugh. It felt human. The next morning, Du Yun ran into the house with exciting news. He had caught his first fish all by himself. He held it up proudly, water dripping from his hands, a huge smile on his face. Everyone gathered to celebrate. Sun Yi cooked the small fish and served it to Du Yun as a special treat. The boy ate it with pride while the aliens and humans cheered for him. Watching this simple celebration, Vexil felt his heart fill with warmth. This was what the survival manual could never understand. This was what made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. They didn't just survive. They celebrated. They laughed. They loved. They found joy in small moments and meaning in hard work. They took care of each other, whether family or stranger. They were not the deadliest creatures on a death world. They were the kindest. And that, Vexil realized, was their greatest strength of all. 6 weeks had passed since the crash. The alien crew had grown strong on Earth. Their bodies had adapted to the heavy gravity and thick air. Their skin had darkened from the sun. Their hands had hardened from work. They were no longer the weak, frightened survivors who had stumbled out of a broken ship. They had become part of the farm. Vexil stood in the rice field one morning, helping Tejo with the harvest. The work was hard, but he had learned to enjoy the burn in his muscles. It made him feel alive in a way that sitting on a spaceship never had. "You've gotten good at this," Tejo said, watching Vexil cut the rice stalks with smooth movements. "I had a good teacher," Vexil replied. They worked in comfortable silence for a while. The sun was warm on their backs. Birds flew overhead, singing their strange Earth songs. It was a perfect morning. Then Navigator Dorix came running from the house. "Commander," he shouted, "the emergency beacon. We're getting a response. Vexel felt his heart stop. After all these weeks, he had almost forgotten about the beacon. He had almost forgotten that rescue was coming. He dropped his tools and ran to the house. The others were already gathered around the communication device. A voice was coming through, scratchy and distant but clear. Survey Team 7. This is Galactic Rescue Ship Horizon. We have received your emergency signal. Our position is 3 days out. Repeat, 3 days out. Prepare for extraction. 3 days. In 3 days, they would leave Earth. They would leave the farm, the family, everything they had built in the past 6 weeks. The crew looked at each other with mixed emotions. Relief. Yes. They would finally go home. But also, sadness. Deep, surprising sadness. We should tell the family, Thena said quietly. They found Sun Yi, Tae-ho, Yuna, and Do-yun in the kitchen. The humans could tell immediately that something was wrong. What happened? Sun Yi asked. Vexel tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. It was Kira who finally said the words, "Rescue is coming. In 3 days, we will leave." The kitchen went silent. Do-yun looked down at the floor. Yuna turned away to hide her face. Tae-ho put his hand on his grandmother's shoulder. Well, Sun Yi said after a long moment, then we have 3 days to give you a proper farewell. The next 3 days were bittersweet. The aliens worked alongside the humans, from sunrise to sunset. They wanted to help as much as possible before they left. They repaired fences, planted seeds for the next season, and stacked enough firewood to last through the winter. At night, they gathered around the fire and shared stories. The aliens told tales of distant worlds and strange adventures. The humans told stories of Earth, of ancestors who had survived wars and famines and storms, who had built this farm from nothing and passed it down through generations. Do-yun cried on the second night. He had grown close to Kira, and the thought of losing his alien friend broke his young heart. Will you ever come back? He asked her. Kira knelt down and looked him in the eyes. I don't know if I can. Space is very big, and my home is very far away. But I promise you this, I will never forget you. Do-yun. I will never forget what you taught me about fishing and about being brave. The boy hugged her tight. Kira hugged him back, and she did not try to hide her tears. On the morning of the 3rd day, the rescue ship appeared in the sky. It was huge, silver, and beautiful. It landed in the open field behind the farm, sending waves of dust and wind across the land. The door opened, and soldiers in protective suits stepped out. They saw Vexel and his crew standing there, healthy and strong, surrounded by humans. The look of shock on their faces would have been funny if the moment wasn't so sad. Commander Vexel? The lead soldier asked, confusion clear in his voice. You're alive? Very much so, Vexel said. Thanks to this family. He gestured to Sun Yi, Tae-ho, Yuna, and Do-yun. The soldiers stared at the humans like they were looking at ghosts. Sir, this is a Class 7 Deathworld. How did you survive for 6 weeks? Vexel smiled. The survival manual was wrong. About many things. The time came to say goodbye. The aliens stood facing the human family they had grown to love. No one knew what to say. Sun Yi stepped forward first. She was so small and old, but her presence was as strong as ever. She reached up and placed her wrinkled hand on Vexel's cheek. You came to us as strangers, she said. You leave as family. Remember what you learned here. Carry it with you across the stars. Vexel's voice was thick with emotion. I will never forget you. I will never forget any of this. Each alien said their goodbyes. Thena hugged Sun Yi. Dorix shook hands with Yuna, holding on longer than necessary. Kira knelt down and gave Do-yun one last hug. Be brave, she whispered to him. And always be kind. Do-yun nodded, tears streaming down his face. Tae-ho walked with Vexel toward the ship. They stopped at the edge of the landing area. Thank you, Vexel said. For everything. You saved our lives. Teho shook his head. You would have found a way to survive. I could see it in you from the first day. You have the spirit of a survivor, Vexel. I learned it from you. They clasped hands one final time. Then Vexel turned and walked onto the rescue ship. He did not look back. He could not. The ship rose into the sky. Through the window, Vexel watched the farm grow smaller and smaller. He could see 4 tiny figures standing in the field, waving goodbye. He pressed his hand against the glass. Commander, one of the soldiers said, we need to file your report. What happened down there? How did you survive on a Deathworld for 6 weeks? Vexel sat down and began to speak. He talked for hours. He told them about the farm and the family. He told them about the storm and the harvest. He told them about kindness and resilience and the strange beauty of Earth. When he was finished, the soldier looked confused. Sir, with respect, none of this matches our data on Class 7 planets. The survival manual clearly states, the survival manual is wrong, Vexel interrupted. Humans don't follow survival manuals. They write their own rules. They don't just survive, they live. They build homes and raise children, and find joy in a world that should be impossible. That's what makes them different from every other species in the galaxy. He paused, thinking about Sun Yi and her tea. About Teho and his patience. About Yuna and her strength. About Do-Yun and his simple, powerful kindness. My official recommendation, Vexel said, is that humanity be reclassified. They are not the inhabitants of a death world. They are the masters of one. And they did it not with weapons or technology, but with love. The soldier wrote down his words without comment. But Vexel knew that his report would change things. The galaxy would learn the truth about humans. They were not weak. They were not primitive. They were extraordinary. Far below, on a small farm on a planet called Earth, 4 humans went back to their daily work. The fields needed tending. The animals needed feeding. Life continued, as it always had, and somewhere in the garden, a strange plant that Vexel had accidentally saved was beginning to bloom. Sun Yi smiled when she saw it. He left something behind after all, she said to herself. Then she went inside to make tea, humming a soft tune, already looking forward to the next season's harvest.